French Guiana is huge, as large as Portugal. At 84,000 square kilometres, it is the only one of the 7 outermost regions of Europe that is located on a continent, thereby providing a port of entry for metropolitan France and Europe into South America and especially the Brazilian Colossus. The largest region of France, it is also one of the European regions farthest from Maastricht. Because of this, it suffers from being isolated and closed off. To the west, the Maroni River separates French Guiana and Suriname. The border with Brazil, more than 600 kilometers long, is formed to the east by the Oyapock River and to the south by the Tumuk-Humuk Mountains. By 2012, the construction of a bridge over the Oyapock should make it possible to develop trade and cooperation with Brazil.
Flying over the region is essential for understanding French Guiana. As soon as you leave the strip of coastline behind, the forest appears crisscrossed by many rivers. 3/4 of the population are concentrated in the cities of what is called the Île de Cayenne and Kourou. The rest are scattered along the border rivers, especially at Saint-Laurent-du-Maroni. Economic activity is concentrated primarily around the urban areas.
The forest that covers 94% of the country abounds in hundreds of thousands of varieties of plants, birds, insects, reptiles, amphibians and mammals. To date, about 10% of French Guiana's total area consists of nature preserves. When current projects are completed, protected natural areas will cover 30 to 35% of French Guiana's total area. Here, nature reigns supreme, and its diversity makes this place unique in the world. Amazonia accounts for more than 80% of the planet's animal and plant species. Recognized by the European community and worldwide, this biodiversity represents an inestimable natural heritage. But it is also a twofold challenge for the years ahead, to ensure not just its preservation, but also its opening up for development.
In French Guiana, green tourism takes on its full meaning. 1,000 miles from the white sand beaches and turquoise lagoons featured in travelers' catalogues, green is everywhere here. A deep, dense green dominates the landscape everywhere you look. Ecological diversity and development of the local tourism infrastructure makes this an industry with a bright future. Sustainable tourism is an advantage that should be taken into account by decision makers and investors in the development programs they come up with for this land.
The same is true for cultural tourism. Pre-Columbian stone etchings, superb ceramics and art held in the museums in Cayenne and Regina, and Creole architecture are a rich and still little-known patrimony. The transportation camp at Saint-Laurent-du-Maroni, the Space Museum at the Guiana Space Center, where the European Kourou space adventure plays out, or the Île du Salut, haunted by the memories of Captain Dreyfus and Papillon, are among the more accessible and popular sites. French Guiana is also rich in its people. Every step and every stopping place throughout the country bring opportunities to meet the people of French Guiana. It would not be out of place to use the word multi-ethnic. There are some 30 languages spoken in French Guiana, and about a dozen of them are indigenous. But French and Creole are nonetheless the main languages that enable everyone to communicate.
French Guiana has atypical geographic and demographic features that create special needs requiring targeted responses. Unlike other French regions which face aging populations, French Guiana is experiencing exceptional demographic growth. It has an annual rate of growth that is 6 times greater than that of metropolitan France, which causes the population to double every 20 years.
The only outermost region that is not an island, French Guiana has more than 1,000 kilometers of border with Suriname and Brazil, both borders that are difficult to control. Immigration is an important factor in its population growth. Foreign nationals account for more than 1/3 of French Guiana's population. The combined effects of the land's configuration and demographic pressure create steadily growing needs for facilities in many different areas.
Sectors most in need of infrastructure, of course, include education, training, health, housing, but also culture, urban infrastructure, telecommunications, the hospitality industry, environment and sports. A project has been initiated to make French Guiana France's forward base for preparing the 2014 World Cup and for the 2016 Olympics, both of which will take place in Brazil. This region needs to catch up on its structural backwardness and must do this while anticipating its ever-growing needs for the future.
In addition to its galloping demography, French Guiana is characterized by its youth. 50% of the population is under age 25. In terms of school construction, therefore, the needs are especially acute, and the local governments, region and department are under pressure to open up new middle and secondary schools. For the years to come, the construction schedule is intense, with an average of 3 elementary and 1 middle schools per year and 1 secondary school every 2 years. The government and the European funds are paying for a major portion of these investments.
For many different reasons, especially the strong population growth and mass immigration, there are still more than 2,000 children who do not attend school because of a lack of classrooms and teachers. There are an additional 2,100 students each year, primary and secondary included, for all of French Guiana. In addition, many young people drop out of the school system each year without receiving a diploma. French Guiana has an unemployment rate that is twice as high as metropolitan France, and more than 50% of job seekers have no diploma. Acquiring basic skills is essential to enable the populations concerned to have access to training that will qualify them for a job.
It is also essential to provide diversified education adapted to local conditions and to make vocational training accessible to the greatest possible number of people. To achieve this, municipal training centres must be created or a mobility policy developed, because the difficulty of accessing training sites is a major hindrance for people living in the more remote towns. For advanced training, the Guiana University Centre is part of the twofold objective of consolidating and developing higher education and research in French Guiana. It will have to become an essential tool in service of academic excellence at the crossroads of metropolitan France, Europe and Latin America. All these efforts, carried on with multiple partners, are contributing to building social cohesion. The low educational level is one of the stumbling blocks to economic development of the area.
Because of its geographic environment and remoteness from the sources of raw materials, French Guiana's economy is not very competitive. Costs, especially for shipping goods, are a handicap, even though financial aid is available to compensate them. Because the access channel to the commercial port of Degradé-Cannes is silting up, ships' draft is limited. Transshipment is often required in Trinidad, and the wait times are especially long compared to other destinations, which also means additional costs for ship owners. Since they are dependent on ship arrivals, French Guiana's enterprises have to work constantly to keep from running out of inventory.
In addition to this regional isolation, there is interior isolation. Distances can be great, some roads are in bad condition, infrastructure is sometimes a limiting factor, and several towns are accessible only by river or by air. These additional constraints further increase the already significant costs of products. As an example, a litre of mineral water costs twice as much in Maripasoula as on the coast. These disparities are harmful to the development of isolated towns, making it difficult to carry out economic projects that could contribute to local development. That is why almost all of French Guiana's companies are located on the Ile de Cayenne or close to Kourou. This leads to saturated infrastructure, a shortage of land and tensions in the housing market.
French Guiana's economy is dominated by public purchasing and a highly developed tertiary sector, but the region nonetheless has 4 major traditional productive sectors: agriculture, fishing, gold and logging. Alongside the traditional slash-and-burn agriculture, there are modern mechanized farms specialized in growing rice or raising livestock, or focused on market gardening. There is a strong potential for development of French Guiana's agriculture. Support for this sector is essential to enable large-scale projects to take hold.
With its expanse and diversity, French Guiana's forest abounds in tree species that have a strong potential. Sustainably managed, it is for the most part the private domain of the government, which grants concessions to forestry operators. Considering the construction needs, supply for the constantly growing local market and the prospects for export sales, the logging industry is booming. Funded by the European Regional Development Fund, the Maison de la Forêt et des Bois brings together some 50 enterprises, producing standardized and eco-certified products and making good use of technological innovation.
The fishing sector in French Guiana covers an exclusive economic zone of 130,000 square kilometers, extending along 350 kilometers of coastline. With about 100 boats, the sector includes both fish and shrimp. Restructuring in recent years has given real impetus to the industry, especially with the creation of the regional interest market. Today, all the professionals in the sector need to lead an effort focusing on the processing and export of the sector's products.
Gold mining in French Guiana is a 150-year-old historical reality. In 2008, it was also an economic reality with 700 people employed in the sector and a declared production of 1,549 kilos. Despite significant efforts made in 2006 with the prohibition of the use of mercury and specific efforts aimed at restoring mine sites and controlling water quality, the sector suffers from a bad image, considering the special context associated with clandestine gold panning. Citizen pressure and the evolution of environmental needs have forced the industry to consider the consequences of extraction on biodiversity, and especially the need to implement methods of exploitation that respect the environment. The future of this sector, which is in the midst of reorganization, will depend on the policies implemented, whereas French Guiana's gold mining potential remains among the most significant on the Guiana Shield.
In French Guiana, the space industry holds a unique position. Present for the last 40 years, the CNES and its Guiana Space Center is a key actor in French Guiana's economy. France has an ambitious space policy in the European context and in service of Europe, consisting of mastering space from end to end and being a driving force in the construction of Europe in space. The repeated successes of Ariane 5 and the arrival of the Soyuz and Vega launchers all point to the importance of the space industry for French Guiana, France and Europe.
The CNES, as a complement to its primary mission associated with space activities, set up the CNES CSG mission in 2000. In particular, it is responsible for proposing and supporting projects and measures that contribute to French Guianan economic development through strategic and political approaches chosen by France and the region.
For several years, French Guiana has been focusing on the importance of higher education, research and innovation as part of its economic development. In this, it is following the European Union's directives and recommendations. A certain number of initiatives and special projects are already successfully demonstrating the region's desire to innovate, and the Guyana University Center project should contribute substantially to this innovation strategy. For example, the SEAS Guyana program, begun in 2005, is a successful concept based on analyzing satellite images via the new Cayenne IRD CNES receiving station, benefiting the entire community and for diverse applications. Studying the data gathered provides a better understanding of the mechanisms by which ecosystems function, helps monitor land use and water resources, oversees certain sensitive areas like fishing and gold mining zones, and helps in establishing epidemiological monitoring.
Established in 2006, the ECOFOG Joint Research Unit brings together the resources of several research institutions and Antilles Guyane University. It works on the ecosystems of the French Guianan forest in close and well-organized cooperation with all the other research and development institutions in French Guiana. The ECOFOG GRU has two objectives. First, to provide a better understanding of relationships between biodiversity and the functioning of forest ecosystems, and second, to encourage innovation by exploiting forest resources in the context of this biodiversity in a tropical rainforest environment. Today, this JRU is a concrete example of a successful approach to higher education and research in French Guiana. Another example is the Voltalia biomass plant in Kourou, created with tax exemption support. It went into operation in late July 2009. Its operation produces electricity by treating waste from French Guiana's sawmills. This project contributes to reducing the country's energy dependence and limits greenhouse gas emissions.
Through its structural funds, Europe has been contributing to French Guiana's development for more than 20 years. For the period 2007 to 2013 alone, public and European funds supporting projects carried out by French Guiana amount to more than €1 billion for needs that were substantially greater. Despite this considerable and indispensable aid, French Guiana continually faces delays in facilities, infrastructures and education, which all hinder its economic development.
At a time when the concepts of sustainable, concerted development are more topical than ever, this land of contrast and bright future offers undeniable potential. The youthfulness of its population, the vastness of its land, extraordinary biodiversity and a unique geostrategic position. Assets like these should make it possible to carry out real development projects. The attractions of this exceptional territory must now be emphasized in order to appeal to investors seeking innovative research projects. Three great challenges have to be met in the coming decades: speeding up economic development while increasing competitiveness, promoting the dynamics of education, employment and social inclusion, and continuing to develop the territory. With support from French and community institutions, French Guiana can remain in control of its development while meeting the expectations of all the components of its population.